All right, through this story, we're going to explore what is absolutely, hands down, the greatest tale of human resilience ever recorded. The year is 1914, and British explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton is setting out to do something completely unprecedented, literally pushing the very limits of what a human being can endure.
Okay, let's dive straight into this. Just picture the scenario for a second. 28 men heading into the most dangerous, mysterious, and unforgiving continent on the planet, Antarctica. Remember, there are no smartphones here, there's no GPS, absolutely zero modern technology. If things go sideways out there in the minus 50-degree temperatures and blinding blizzards, well, there is simply no one to call for help.
So, Shackleton's original plan, it was staggeringly ambitious. The goal was to sail into the Weddell Sea, disembark, and map a massive 2,900-kilometer route straight across the Antarctic continent to the Ross Sea. If everything went perfectly according to plan, the whole trek would take about 120 days. But, as we all know, Antarctica kind of plays by its own rules.
Before they could even reach the shoreline to start their walk, they hit a catastrophic roadblock. Their ship, the Endurance, met some exceptionally thick and dense ice in the Weddell Sea, and it just completely locked the ship in place. For 9 agonizing months, they were stuck, and as the harsh Antarctic winter set in, it brought with it 24 hours of total darkness, plummeting temperatures, and the creeping dread of all that shifting ice. Now, the physical reality of their crisis was genuinely horrifying. On October 24th, 1915, the massive pressure of the ice finally did it. It ruptured the ship's hull. Freezing water just started pouring in. The crew worked relentlessly, 3 days straight in minus 8.5 degrees Celsius, frantically pumping water out. But the ocean was rushing in way faster than they could ever fight it. Can you even imagine the psychological toll of watching your only sanctuary get destroyed? When Shackleton finally gave the heartbreaking order to abandon ship, crew member Tom McLeod looked at the crushing reality around him and uttered those exact words. They were now stranded on a floating piece of ice in the middle of a frozen ocean, entirely cut off from the rest of the world. And this brilliantly illustrates the real turning point of our explainer, because in that catastrophic moment, the goal completely shifted. This wasn't about historical exploration anymore. The dream of crossing Antarctica literally died with their ship. Shackleton immediately pivoted his mindset. The new, singular focus? Pure survival. They had to figure out how to navigate a frozen, shifting landscape and somehow get all 28 men back to civilization alive. To pull this off, ruthless prioritization was required. Shackleton ordered every single man to carry a maximum of 2 pounds of essential gear. And to set the ultimate example, he threw his own valuable gold coins and his Bible directly into the snow. Think about that. Nothing was more valuable than their lives. Though they did make one absolutely crucial exception. The ship's photographer, Frank Hurley, was allowed to save 150 photo negatives. That ensured the world would eventually see visual proof of their insane ordeal. Really, this whole survival story is a masterclass in human psychology. Surviving extreme physical odds requires unbreakable mental fitness. It's exactly like how modern survivors, like renowned fitness coach Dinaz Ravatullah, overcame 53% body burns through sheer mental strength. Shackleton applied this exact principle. He gave everyone daily chores to fight off depression, he strictly controlled their tiny food rations, projected this unyielding optimism. And get this, he even lied about how much food they had left, just to keep their motivation alive. And his leadership? It was intensely hands-on. Like one night, the ice cracked right under their camp, and a fireman named Ernie Holness fell into the freezing ocean. They managed to pull him out, sure, but with no fire to warm him, fatal hypothermia was pretty much imminent. So Shackleton's solution? He ordered Holness to walk nonstop, all night long. That constant physical movement generated enough body heat to literally dry his clothes and save his life second by agonizing second. Finally, after drifting on melting ice floes for months, they took to their 3 small lifeboats. On April 15, 1916, they navigated through the ice and landed on Elephant Island. After 497 terrifying days adrift, it was the very first time they felt solid ground beneath their feet. They were absolutely thrilled, but man, that relief was incredibly short-lived. See, Elephant Island was completely desolate, uninhabited. No one knew they were there, and nobody was coming for them. Shackleton had to weigh some agonizing rescue options. Now, Cape Horn and the Falklands were closer, but going there meant sailing directly against the worst possible ocean currents. So he chose option 3, South Georgia Island. Yes, it was the furthest away, but the ocean winds would actually be at their backs. But let me hit you with the terrifying reality of that choice. South Georgia was 1,300 kilometers away. And to get there, Shackleton and 5 chosen men had to cross the Drake Passage. That is historically known as the deadliest stretch of ocean in the entire world, literally a graveyard for over 800 ships. And they had to do it in a tiny 22-foot hand-rowed open lifeboat. So the crucial point here is the sheer, sickening physical torture they endured on that boat. We're talking about facing 12-meter high waves crashing down on them. Their daily routine was just brutal. 4 hours of exhausting rowing, followed by 4 hours of so-called rest. And by rest, I mean lying in freezing water at the bottom of the boat, frantically pumping out the ocean so they wouldn't capsize and sink. After weeks of this nightmare, they actually saw the peaks of South Georgia Island, just 3 miles away. But then a massive hurricane struck. I mean, you can't make this up. For days, the storm battered their tiny boat so violently that the exhausted men literally had to drop their oars, completely surrender to the waves, and just pray the ocean would spare them. Miraculously, they survived it and dragged themselves onto the beach. But of course, their boat was entirely shattered, and they had landed on the wrong side of the island. Between them and the whaling station on the other side lay a vast range of uncharted 10,000-foot-high ice mountains. No human being had ever crossed the interior of this island by foot, but it was their only option. Knowing that time was completely running out, Shackleton, Worsley, and Crean left their heavy sleeping bags behind to move as fast as humanly possible. They began a frantic 36-hour nonstop trek across those freezing peaks. They literally had to use an axe to chop stairs into the ice just to descend the cliffs. Pushed to the absolute edge of human endurance, they finally heard it, the mechanical whistle of the Stromness whaling station. They had actually made it.
But meanwhile, we can't forget the 22 men stranded back on Elephant Island. They were huddling under 2 upside-down lifeboats. They were frostbitten, starving, and one guy even had to have his toes amputated because of gangrene. Yet their appointed leader, Frank Wild, somehow kept hope alive. Every single morning, against all logic, he would look out at the empty ocean and tell his men, "Pack your things, boys, the boss might come today." It took an agonizing 4 months and 6 days for that hope to finally materialize. Shackleton tried 3 separate times to get a rescue ship through the thick sea ice to his men, and 3 times the ice forced him right back. Finally, on his 4th desperate attempt aboard a Chilean ship called the Yelcho, he managed to break through. When the men on Elephant Island saw that ship approaching, they were absolutely stunned. The boss had actually come back for them. And here is the emotional payoff, the ultimate miracle of this entire deep dive. All 28 men who started that fateful journey survived. Shackleton might have completely failed his mission of exploration, but he orchestrated the absolute greatest triumph of human resilience and leadership in history. And this story has one final, literally mind-blowing epilogue. A century later, in 2022, that's 106 years after it sank, deep-sea investigators actually located the wreck of the Endurance. It was sitting 10,000 feet below the surface in the Weddell Sea, and because of the freezing temperatures and the lack of wood-eating parasites down there, the ship was found perfectly preserved. It looked almost exactly as it did the day it was crushed. This incredible historical epic strips away all our modern comforts and really shows us that what keeps us alive is sheer willpower, unyielding teamwork, and an absolute refusal to quit. So I want to leave you with this thought. When faced with the overwhelming challenges in your own life, what impossible situation could you survive with unbreakable mental fortitude and leadership? Keep that in mind, and seriously, never